Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome, welcome. Come on in, settle down. We are going to start our Q&A session very soon. I'm just going to wait for a couple of people to come in. Woo! In a second, we had 32 people coming in. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. Can you please give us a thumbs up and just connect with us and let us know if you can hear us and if you can see us. I see JD Turner. I see Beverly from Santa Cruz. Hi, guys. It's so good to see you all. I hope you're all doing well. How are you, Dean?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah.
It feels like I'm taking over the conversation.
It's good. It's good.
But good to have you all. Brenda's here. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Beverly, for letting us know that the sound quality is good. Excellent. So today we have quite a lot of questions here with us. Thank you so much for filling out the post, and feel free to start typing in whatever questions you may have that you haven't really posted in the homepage of Brain Health Revolution, and we would be happy to answer them. So many lovely people from all over the country, as well as Canada, from Olympia, Washington, Sandra, our good old friend Candice from Redondo Beach, our neighbors here. It's good to see you, Candice. I mean, good to have you with us. I wish I could see you, but it's wonderful for all of you guys to be here. So I'm going to go ahead and start the conversation. You'll see me posting some of the questions in there. I think it's important for us to start with omega-3s.
Correct.
Because that's something that you all had a lot of questions on. So we'll go ahead and start that. And the questions specifically were, about omega-3, what test, if there is any test out there that people can do. And then we can actually go ahead and start addressing some of the other aspects of it. So let's start with this. People want to know whether they should test their omega-3 content. And maybe we can actually give them an overview of omega fats to begin with.
I know. So some of you might actually hear things redundantly. That's because we have new populations coming all the time. I'll try to be always fairly concise, but it's important. The only fat that your brain needs is omega-3s. The statement that you might have heard in other venues that your brain is made of fat and therefore you need fat is wrong. Couldn't be further from the truth. What you need is omegas, which is most importantly DHA, EPA and DHA. And the transformation is usually when you get it from a plant form or from other forms, that's ALA to EPA to DHA. But if you're getting it from fish or other sources like algae, that's directly you'll be getting DHA. And these fats are important for brain development, for brain maintenance, as well as the infrastructure of the myelin, which is the coating around the connections between the cells, and in so many other processes as well. So it's extremely important. It always comes to the fact that whether we need to measure the quantity of omega-3 in your blood. And we believe in measuring things. We are in 21st century. So I want you to get rid of some of the language like it's not natural, or if the body meant to, or the nature meant to. If you're going by nature, we should all be dying at age 30. So I'm a little bit on the blunt side, as you know.
You kind of are today.
Yeah.
It just got a little dark.
No. We're going to live beautifully and healthfully and vibrantly with arms flailing when we don't have my arm throughout life into 70s, 80s, 90s, and maybe beyond. So we're actually cheating the natural. Since we're cheating the natural, there are some things we have to do, such as sometimes take supplements if need be, sometimes do surgeries. I mean, whenever, and then sometimes do testing to find out if you have the appropriate amount of certain things. And so B12 definitely should be tested. Thyroid a few years. Lipid levels definitely yearly if you can. Glucose, or specifically hemoglobin A1C, and if you have a more sophisticated insurance, even insulin resistance through HOMA-IR and other ways. But vitamin levels, omega-3 being so important is a controversial one.
Right.
Omega-3 measurement has not been fully vetted. So today, yesterday, and the day before, I've been looking throughout the literature to get a good sense of somebody saying that whether it's the quant test, the omega quant test, or other tests are valid, whether it's a PCR methodology or gas chromatography, where they burn the chemical and then they see the spectrum of where it falls. What methodology is most accurate and representative? And there's, at this point, there doesn't seem to be, or at least I couldn't find anything that gave me comfort as far as validity. Now, a lot of things we say, and this is the controversy, is your method of interpretation. And that's why there might be a little bit of controversy as far as oil and no oil and how much salt and no salt. But in general, we have a methodology of identifying validity. Mm-hmm. Validity means, is the thing truly depicting what it's supposed to? Is it true, basically? And we don't have a good measure, a good evidence of measurement tools for omega-3 being 100% valid. Having said that, in the next couple of months, we will hopefully bring a lipidologist.
Yeah.
I didn't even know. Yeah. Lipidologist. I didn't even know that there would be somebody that would be super specializing in lipids. Yeah. But I think it's such an important concept that we would love to interview a lipidologist in 2 months or 3 months in here to get more details as far as this is concerned.
Absolutely.
As it is, you might want to do, the omega-3 testing, or just assume, because so far we know that it's not problematic to get omega-3 supplementation or eat a little more food that has omega-3. Just eat more omega-3 related foods, and that helps. I know that that's not a very satisfying answer, like gives you quantifiable and answer that's solid and absolute. But as you've learned by now, we don't go by absolutes. We go by data and science. And sometimes science is a little amoebic, and this is where one of those things. When it comes to glucose, there's no questions. We know the levels. We know the test is valid. When it comes to the vitamin levels, we know just that.
Yeah. So let's talk about dose. A lot of people want to know what dose. So first of all, there was a question, or there was actually a statement saying that we wrote that there's really no evidence that people who are healthy, who don't have any cognitive impairment, actually benefit from omega-3 supplementation. We don't actually have any evidence. But then we had mentioned at one point that we as a family and our kids, we do take supplements. And so people wanted to know, why is that?
You're asking me?
I could actually answer it too.
Yeah.
So I think, we decided...
I didn't take my omega-3 this morning. Yeah, I haven't.
You're saying you didn't take his omega-3 this morning.
That's why I was late on my answer.
But I guess the reason we take it is because of just this fast-paced nature of our lives. There are days when we miss our chia seeds and flax seeds, or maybe, for example, instead of eating our overnight oats, there are days when we just, use a whole wheat toast with some almond cheese that I make at home and just get out of the door. And I don't really have good control over what the kids eat on a regular basis, because most of the day they're studying and they're away from me. At least they're going to be away from here on after the pandemic. So we take in a supplement. And also knowing that we have a family history of Alzheimer's disease, both of us, and we probably have the genes, or the ApoE4 gene. We just want to make sure we be on the safe side of things. And that was just a personal decision for us. And yeah, that's basically it.
We did the research. We've done 2 papers, this, and the evidence, although not, again, when it came to omega-3, not perfect, but the trends and strong trends toward usage of omega-3 in those who are getting older, and the young. And given its profound importance for the brain from our interpretation of the data, and given the minimal side effects for those who take the appropriate doses, which is anywhere, 250 to 1,000 of DHA, even if you don't have coagulopathy or blood, any kind of bleeding disorder or something like that, then we thought that all of that math pointed to us using it to our benefit, especially given our history.
Absolutely. I don't want to give you guys any info on brands. I think we're not really supporting any brand, and we're not going to promote any brand. But, as far as the kind and type is concerned, getting an algae-based omega-3 fatty acids, of course, that has high amount of DHA. DHA is the ultimate omega-3 fatty acid that is important for brain health. And you want to... So this is based on just our understanding of the clinical trials and the data that we have so far. And it seems that people and scientists have not had they have not had any results is because first it was the omega-3 was tested in the wrong population. Second, they think that the dose was not right. The dose that was given to them was on the lower side. Mm-hmm. So right now there is a clinical trial that is going on at USC, and they're trying to test higher doses of omega-3 fatty acid supplementation in patients with cognitive impairment. And the trends show us that higher is better. Yes. I think I talked a lot about that, but aiming for 500 milligrams of DHA per day and more is appropriate. There is another question that I will actually show is, somebody actually said, what about omega-3 fatty acids in men? And is there any association or any relationship with prostate cancer or omega-3 supplementation?
So this is, again, a complex answer. We definitely believe that when people are not, when they don't need supplementation, they shouldn't get it, especially vitamin levels, not so much omega-3, but vitamin levels, because whenever you have enough levels of everything else, you don't need the only cells that are going to use those extra vitamins and nutrients is going to be the fastest growing cells in your body, which are cancer cells. So that's why the vitamin A study and vitamin E study showed that people who had risk of lung cancer, when they got their vitamin A in the natural form, they had lower risk of lung cancer. But when they did a study and they implemented then and gave them vitamin A, their risk actually went up. So I wanted to make it more complex because we have to know that just getting bags and bags of vitamins, which we see a lot of patients, cannot be good. And we know another doctor that's written a book and now is on TV all the time selling vitamins. There is no basis of that. When it comes to this study, though, it was a very weak study. We actually have spoken about this on social media. There was a video, and we might actually share that with you guys. The data on this study was weak. It was not generalizable, and it was just completely approached in a wrong way. So we don't think that it was valid, and the data for it is really strong, much stronger than the other way around.
Right.
So and that's just the I think appropriate interpretation of the data.
Right. Debbie said something. Debbie Shapiro says, luckily I had my DNA tested with 23andMe and then ran the data through Prometheum and learned that I don't convert ALA to DHA. So ALA is a plant-based omega-3 that gets converted to DHA. I think everyone should supplement with algae just in case.
One thing about this thing that not enough is said about is it's not just about taking, chia and flaxseed and walnuts and things of that nature. The enzymatic conversion of ALA to EPA is run by an enzyme that has it's a rate-limiting enzyme, meaning that there's only so much of it, and actually two different processes work through those enzymatic system. The omega-6 pathway works through that as well. Mm-hmm. So that means that if you have in 21st century, unlike, let's say, 200 years ago, where the omega-6 level was a lot lower, in 21st century, everything that's processed, every food that you eat has profound amounts of omega-6. In fact, if you look at the ratios, like thousands of times more. Mm-hmm. And omega-6 is necessary in the body, but as we get older, we try to have it on the lower side, both for its own coagulation and inflammation factor, and also the fact that it competes with omega-3 pathway through that conversion of ALA to EPA. So it's not a matter of just increasing your ALA source. It's also about reducing your omega-6 intake.
Absolutely.
So the less processed food you eat, the less omega-3. The less meat and cheese and that kind of stuff you eat, significantly less omega-6. So it's critical to take that into consideration when you are making the calculation. Yes, increase the omega-3 level through food. If you're going to take a supplement, that helps quite a bit because it just jumps to DHA, and so it doesn't have to worry about the conversion. And definitely, no matter what, reduce your omega-6 quantity with the choices of foods, because processed foods, meats, cheeses, and those kind of things have a lot of omega-6.
Right. Absolutely. Barb says, and I had actually included that question too. What about omega capsules containing carrageenan? So carrageenan is essentially a compound that makes the capsules I think it's for the texture, and it's also for its shelf life.
Yeah.
There really, as much as you hear on the internet, there really isn't many studies that look at the effect of carrageenan, and the amount of carrageenan that is used is minuscule in these capsules, and it's not going to hurt. As a matter of fact, it's actually going to increase the shelf life. All right, so I hope this was helpful. We spent the first 15 minutes on omega-3s because a lot of you had questions. We'd be happy to answer more questions.
If you have the supplements, take them, because I think we used up all their omega-3 in these 15 minutes.
Was that another dad joke?
That's not a dad. That's a good joke. You can't just label it a dad joke.
Okay, no, yeah. I love it. I love it. All right, so let's go ahead and answer this question. How much turmeric or curcumin is too much?
Don't ask Aisha. I'm
We're bleeding curcumin from our pores.
If you see me turning yellow, there's a reason. She puts curcumin, in everything.
We don't take supplements.
When it comes to curcumin,
we eat curcumin. I make a lot of curries, and I add curcumin to some of our muffins and in pancakes and in waffles. So we eat a lot of curcumin. I think curcumin or turmeric can't be healthy for people, especially turmeric can be healthy for some people who may have kidney stones.
Mm-hmm. And then people who also tend to bleed. So if you have a bleeding disorder, be aware of it, because it also increases bleeding.
That's not very strong, though.
It's not. But there is evidence of that. So just be aware.
Right. And honestly, the amount of turmeric that you have to eat that would exacerbate any bleeding disorder would be in the measures of tablespoons per day. But we always say,
basically, us basically.
No, we don't eat that much. But I think, eating about a teaspoon and a half, like a teaspoon and a half of turmeric per day, or even half a teaspoon, actually is quite beneficial. So that's the amount that seems to be beneficial. But of course, too much of anything can be harmful. All right. Let's see. You're pointing to something.
Sandy has difficulty hearing us.
Do you guys have trouble hearing us? I hope not, but I hope I haven't heard from anyone else. Sandy, I hope you can hear us, and I hope you can see if it's on your end. But if it's on our end, please let us know. Okay, let's see. The next question is about, I think this was Aaron's question. How do you talk to family members about healthy foods, and specific to children? How do you stop children from eating bad foods? I think there was a particular question Aaron's asking that, her 8-year-old, I don't know if it was her 8-year, but what would you say to an 8-year-old who says he wants Coca-Cola all of a sudden? I normally dodge the question. He's asked multiple times in the last couple of months.
Yeah. So it's a very complex question, isn't it? So it has to do with your relationship and the contracts, the psychological contracts that you've laid down, and the barriers and the reward systems and the punishment systems. And so it's a very, very complex interplay of all of those. But in general, we kind of work with kids as if they are intelligent beings, of course, at their own level, and communication of the carrot and stick, meaning that not so much as far as punishment, but the potential harm of a thing and the potential benefit of a thing. And then on top of that, add the reward, intrinsic reward, which is make the food tasty, and the extrinsic reward, if need be, taking them out to a park or something like that. So all those 4 pivot points, those mechanisms are important. Talking to them about the harm of Coca-Cola and what it does to the stomach lining, what it does to your arteries, what it does to the brain, what it does to the body. And sometimes, with kids, you can, I'm not saying lie, but hyperboles and making it picturesque and all of that helps. There are these videos of Coca-Cola being put on paint and the paint, being melted. I don't know if that's true, but showing that it's bad for them. And then the benefits of healthy drinking and all of that, or it helps attention, helps sleep, and all of that. And then the element of not having it available. I mean, they do have short time attention span. And if that's not available and there's a tasty, healthy treat or drink in the house, they'll get used to that. So that's basically it. Those are the contracts, social contracts, as Rousseau would have it, although this is not the same kind of social contract, are functional, useful methodologies. At the end of the day, when you're giving them tasty alternatives, and connecting them to their purpose.
Mm.
Like, you're a healthy person,
Right.
remember that identity. If you can indirectly at other times create identity for them,
Yeah.
and not during the time of the immediate tension of that child wanting Coca-Cola, but outside of that, creating a sense of identity. Wow, you're an amazing healthy person. Look at you, you're exercising, you're walking. And this is what's called in psychology operant conditioning. You let the person do the positive behavior, and then you reward it.
Mm.
Or create an environment where the person does the positive behavior accidentally or willfully, and then you reward it. And then you say, wow, look, you're such a healthy person. You're always conscientious and aware of these things. So you might call this manipulation, or you might call this parenting. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Or conversations.
Or
And one thing that actually helped us, me with my children and some nephews and nieces, was, like Dean said, giving them the title, you're such a smart person. And do you know that food affects your brain? And you are intelligent, you feel everything, you're enjoying everything, you're high energy. Do you know that this food actually damages that? It damages your brain. It doesn't allow you to focus. And I think kids do take a lot of pride in who they are. And if you show them that what they do on a daily basis can affect that, I think they will take it on.
For those of you who are going to be coaches with us in the future, or are doing coaching already, behavior change doesn't happen at the point of tension, at the point of contact. When you're in a point of conflict, there's no way you can change anybody's behavior. Yeah. But it happens at the points where you're interacting and you create the environment where the positive behavior happens, and then you reward, you coax, you create other tools, and you build around that behavior. When it comes from intrinsic, from the self, it is much more likely to be sustainable, especially that at that point you're aware and you give further tools to make sure that that behavior is connected and grounded. That's basically behavior change. Mm-hmm. That's why most people get into arguments and everything, because at the point of contact, we're trying to change people. At the point of tension, at the point of conflict, at the point where a person has made that thing their identity, or you force that thing to be their identity. Mm-hmm. Like saying that if you're drinking it, so you're bad. So they're saying that if you're going to call me bad, I'm going to fight making sure that this is not titled bad.
Yeah.
At that point, there's no way to bring change. It's outside of that moment that you create the opportunity.
Jenny says Coca-Cola is a great drain cleaner. Can't be good for our stomach.
There are videos on the internet that can show that element.
That's true. Okay, let's move on to a different question now. And two of our lovely members actually asked this question about sugar addiction. Carolyn is convinced that sugar addiction is a thing, and she was asking for some evidence, and Darlene kindly shared it, and she said that there's some evidence of the opioid pathway impacted by sugar consumption. She also suggested that maybe they would be interested in a one-on-one training or coaching for those who are addicted to sugar. So the answer is yes, sugar addiction is a thing. It does affect our dopamine pathways. And what happens is the threshold of joy or that comfort that you get, it keeps on increasing. So it's something that keeps on increasing, and you have to eat more and more and more and more sugar to get to that level. And obviously, the best way to get out of it is through small little habit changes. And yes, we definitely are interested, especially for people who want to take the coaching classes, to be advocates of sugar consumption or reducing sugar consumption in any way that they can.
Beautiful.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Another question that was repeated multiple times was, do produce lose their nutrients during storage or dehydration?
Somebody else actually spoke to this as well. I think it was specifically for broccoli or something else.
Yes, there was a question about broccoli that I will actually bring it up. So from multiple studies and from multiple, chemistry studies, chemists actually looking at ORAC, which is essentially the anti-inflammatory compounds changing when the fruit is in the vine or the vegetable is still connected to the plant, cutting it, bringing it to storage, and then processing it in some way where you are either dehydrating it or freezing it, et cetera, et cetera. There is a change in the content and the quality of the anti-inflammatory and antioxidant compounds. Obviously, it is quite high when the fruit is still in the vine or the vegetable is still connected to the plant, and it reduces as soon as you cut it. But it's different for different vegetables and fruits. So not all of them lose their content. As a matter of fact, there are some vegetables and fruits, when they get processed, they actually are healthier. Examples are sweet potatoes. It's a very, very fibrous root vegetable. But when you boil it, the boiling process breaks down the fibers, and it allows for the vitamin A and all the other nutrients to come out and for our bodies to absorb it. And it really doesn't change much as soon as it comes out of earth, because it's a root vegetable. The other example are tomatoes. Tomatoes actually are healthier when you store them. The other example is, some herbs and spices. I'm going to leave that for another question. We'll talk about herbs, dried herbs versus fresh herbs soon. But yes, there is a change, not necessarily bad. There are some frozen foods that actually are healthier because they're picked ripe and they're flash frozen. Berries, most wild berries are actually healthier than fresh berries that are on the shelves, believe it or not. So if you are going to consume it, consume wild berries.
There's a lot of variety, like you said. Some get better, some get worse. But in totality, I want us to make sure that we don't empower words more than their true truth. So organic is better, yes. But how often are foods truly organic? Very, very seldom. And if the choice is organic or non-organic or eating bad food, take the non-organic. By far, it's still better. And the totality of processed, how long and all that. If you're eating vegetables in totality, it's going to be better off for you than not doing so.
Yeah.
Talking about bioavailability, you brought up the idea of food that's processed is more available to you, like sweet potatoes.
Right.
The concept of
the lycopene in tomatoes.
Correct. So concept of bioavailability is, I love that concept, and I think we should have a separate session altogether about bioavailability and things that affect bioavailability. If a product is bound to other foods, it's going to make it less bioavailable. If it's very, very fibrous, that's going to make it less bioavailable. So that's the food in itself. There's a conversation there. Then it's your stomach. Your microbiome determines a big component of bioavailability of nutrients and vitamins and all of that from food. The third is acid content in your stomach. Mm-hmm. Certain medication that you might take that actually reduces the acidity in your stomach or increases it is going to affect it. And then all the other foods that interplay with each other. For example, not watermelon, but the medication lipid, grapefruits affect absorption of certain medication, but also affect other things as well. Mm-hmm. So all of those things interplay as far as bioavailability is concerned. But the most important thing is, if we don't want to get too bogged with the complexity of which one is better when it's processed. Now, more plants and vegetables in totality are way better than what we're eating today.
Right. And if we had to give you a rule of thumb, we would say for root vegetables, they're much better when you bake them and boil them. For green leafy vegetables, obviously, the less they're processed and cooked, the better. So eating them fresh is better. And as far as other fruits are concerned, like tomatoes and avocados, the sooner you eat them, the better. The sooner they're, picked from the vine, the better.
That's
and
great information.
I mean, those are the only solid things that we can give you. But then for everything else, it's kind of a wash. But don't assume that the nutrients are reduced drastically. There are some that reduce, that have reduced amount of nutrients after storage. Like, for example, as far as broccoli is concerned, if broccoli is stored for, say, more than 4 or 5 days, the nutrient level is reduced to, half, close to half, a little above half, but it's still good enough. Now, there was another question about sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is a compound that gets activated when you cut vegetables, whether they're broccoli, cauliflower. It's specifically for cruciferous vegetables. So store broccoli in a cut form and they will have higher nutrients. So, there are things that you can do. For example, if you add some mustard seeds to broccoli, they actually are healthier because the sulforaphane gets even more activated. On a day-to-day basis, I think all of this information shouldn't paralyze us. We should continue to eat fruits and vegetables all the time and not worry too much about them. All right, I'm going to move on to fresh herbs versus dried herbs, because that's a very common question, and I've been asked this question, and I think I had a very superficial answer that, oh, it's just fine. But I wanted to take some time and go into a little bit of detail. So fresh herbs versus dry herbs, most of the time, for most of them, are no different whatsoever as far as their anti-inflammatory and antioxidant compounds are concerned, specifically polyphenols and flavonoids. Polyphenols and flavonoids are present in both of them. As a matter of fact, some dried herbs actually have more polyphenols and flavonoids. Why? Because when you're dehydrating them, they become concentrated. So in 1 teaspoon of, say, dried mint, you actually have more flavonoids and polyphenols. As far as flavor is concerned, that's a different question. There are some herbs that get more flavorful, more concentrated when you dry them. Say, for example, when it comes to turmeric, they get more concentrated in a powdered form. When it comes to things like I'm thinking rosemary. Rosemary actually gets very flavorful when it's dried. But things like mint or chives or parsley, they lose a lot of their flavor, even if they have their flavonoids or polyphenols, and you have to use a whole lot more to give it that punch. So flavor is different, but I don't think you guys should worry too much about the polyphenols or the flavonoids. As a matter of fact, the dried version has more. I hope that was helpful.
Because of its concentration.
Yes, yeah. It was. All right, so some questions about artificial sugars. Monk fruit versus stevia versus sugar alcohols like erythritol, maltitol, et cetera, and how it affects our microbiome. And then there are some specific questions that say, you use very little monk fruit in your recipes. If it's that small, why shouldn't we go with something more natural like maple syrup? Because, people don't have diabetes, and if they don't have any health conditions, then a tiny bit of maple syrup shouldn't hurt. So let's go ahead and talk about artificial sugars. So let's talk about 3 common ones. Let's talk about Splenda, which is sucralose. Now, Splenda and sucralose is a very common sweetener. It's very inexpensive and widely available. When we looked at the data shows that sucralose, with the kind of amount of the amount that people consume, which is about, they come in packets or in teaspoons. If you consume, say, up to 5 or 6 packets a day, there really isn't any data that shows that sucralose can be unhealthy. As a matter of fact, in large populations, when they look at large populations, and close to 50% of the population has either diabetes or prediabetes combined together, consumption of sucralose has actually been associated with better management of diabetes and hyperglycemia. But we don't have specific human studies to show that sucralose can be damaging to our brain, to our heart, or any other system in that way. So, if people want to consume sucralose, I say it's okay. I mean, it's much better to consume monk fruit, obviously, because monk fruit seems to actually have some anti-inflammatory effects, or sugar alcohols for that matter. Erythritol has some anti-inflammatory qualities. But if people want to consume some sweetener, it's much better than regular sugar to take sucralose. What about stevia? Again, no data that shows that small amount of stevia actually affects health. There was some fear mongering about stevia, showing that it's been associated with reproductive organ cancers and some hormonal imbalance. But those studies have been done in mice and other animals, unfortunately, not in human. We don't have long-term studies of stevia actually causing much harm.
Unfortunately, meaning that you wanted it to be done on humans?
Yeah, I want it to be done on humans and not on animals, so both ways.
No, because it's more accurate, because we know that the animal testing is not representative of human testing.
Correct, that's right. So again, and I think one of the reasons people don't feel very comfortable with stevia is because of its taste. Honestly, it has a bitter aftertaste. Yeah. You can't really use it one-on-one like sugar in your recipes. You have to use a very small amount because it's very potent. Stevia plant itself, the leaf itself, is amazing. It's unprocessed and it has less of a bitter aftertaste. And then as far as maple syrup and the natural nature of things is concerned, I'm going to dodge it to you to talk about natural aspects of food, but honestly, there's really nothing, there isn't anything wrong with using small quantities of maple syrup. Really, if you're going to make some muffins, say for example, or if you make a dressing that you're not going to consume every single day, a tablespoon or two of maple syrup is not going to harm you at all. But if you have, say for example, some level of prediabetes, or if your sugar or insulin resistance is not good enough, then it's much better to consume monk fruit compared to maple syrup. And what do you think? I want you actually to shed some light on this notion that things like monk fruit or some foods that are replacements are artificial and maple syrup is natural. And just because of the fact that they're natural, they are better for health. What are your thoughts on that?
We have to be very careful about words like processed and natural. Everything is processed. I mean, unless you're eating raw, everything is processed. Even if the processor that you use during cooking session makes things processed. But if you want to be a little more technical, process means that you're putting chemicals into something. And so we are on the side that where does data point as far as harm or benefit of a thing, instead of pre-labeling it so that we pre-bias ourselves away from things. That's one level. And then if you talk about, then the second level is the science of the thing itself. How strong is the benefit and harm of a thing? We talk about this with olive oil, extra virgin olive oil. I know that that's such a controversial, well, it shouldn't be. I mean, but in the circles we are in, that seems to become almost like a huge controversial thing, but it's
deal
not
breaker.
Really. Yeah, deal. We actually got somebody saying it's a deal breaker. I'm like, okay, then wow. We're dealing with women dying in Afghanistan and an earthquake. I think that would be so. A little bit of olive oil is not, and the data is actually not as strong as people say. So therefore, small amounts we say is okay, given the positive, negative, and the direction. And then the third level, and the most important level for us, which we think we're different than most everybody else who's in this lifestyle realm, is because we've worked in public health. We've actually worked with communities, not like communities on the internet alone, or people who've come to the academic realms, but in the communities themselves across the board. And if something that has small benefit or even small amount of harm, but we have to identify it as harm because we want to make sure that we're quantifying, but it's making you go towards healthy at a significant level, then that's fine.
Yeah.
We hate salt, but we're saying that given that for some, if they're giving up meat, cheese, this, that, and other, and salt is the only thing in small amounts, less than 1,100, we said, then that's fine. Olive oil, same thing, and then maple syrup, sugar. I mean, of course, that we would love to eliminate sugar altogether, but then we have to see the cost benefit and where a small amount, quantifiable, with the idea of transitioning over time, and not using words such as moderation, but a small amount that's going to help you make the rest of your food healthy. That's important.
Yeah.
Right now, we're dealing with actually entire communities that are trying to become healthy. And it's not going to be an all or none phenomenon. No doubt we will talk about the optimal, no sugar.
Yeah.
And if you want, even eliminate artificial sweeteners.
Yeah.
But reality is the data on that is weak. And if it's going to help you be healthy across the board, that's a much bigger gain than just going purist and eliminating everything. Maybe for some of you it works. For us, it works. We're pretty purist in many ways. But for communities that we come from and we see where, the American Heart Association says that by their bad standard, American Heart Association is biased because they're getting funding and all that. We're not going to talk too much about that. Even by their standard, only 0.4%, that's less than 0.5% of Americans are eating healthy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to fight over a little bit of maple or a little bit of artificial sweetener.
But I want you guys to know that we have had trouble because, when you're moving with integrity, we have had trouble saying or using the statement that maple syrup is better than sugar. Even if there's a tiny little benefit in whatever nutritional component that is added, maple syrup is still very high in sugar. That description needs to be made as well. Whether it's agave syrup, maple syrup, or table sugar, or honey for that matter, it's sugar.
Yeah,
it does raise your glycemic index, and it does cause it does contribute to the sugar addiction that we were talking about earlier. I didn't mention the word microbiome again. Our friend, Dr. Will Bulsiewicz, has a book, and he talks about artificial sugar and the microbiome, and how it affects your microbiome. But again, the data is not very strong. And if people don't have any other resources and they have only access to Splenda, say, for example, it's really not going to hurt them if they have an objective or a measured quantity per day.
I think our session with Brenda is Monday.
Yes, Brenda Davis.
Wow.
We're so excited about that.
She's a wealth.
Yes.
And then, by the way, she's one of the other people that actually has gone to a community, an entire island, and changed and studied the lifestyle, and brilliant.
I think you guys are going to love that conversation. I hope you don't miss it.
Send your questions to her.
Yes.
To ask her. Yes.
I'll put in a post, and maybe we'll actually gather everybody's questions for that session. All right. So next question is cholesterol dropping with a healthy lifestyle. There was a friend of ours. She's on a whole food plant-based diet. She is oil-free. She really exercises and does whatever she has to do, but her total cholesterol is not coming down. We actually had a couple people saying that.
So you want more controversy? Here's more controversy. It appears that giving cholesterol-lowering medicine is controversial in some circles. It's not for us. If somebody has a heart disease, I have no problem putting them on cholesterol-lowering medicine. If somebody just had a stroke, oh my goodness, it's unethical not to put them on a cholesterol-lowering medicine.
I actually was a part of the trial, the Sparkle trial, where it was a multinational study where we had a group of people with stroke getting statins and a group of people not getting statins and placebo. And it was very clear. They actually had to stop the study early because it was considered unethical not to give statins to stroke patients because it reduced the size of their stroke. It prevented them having stroke in the next month and the next year. And the outcome was so much better.
Correct. And then with dementia, although there was some evidence or not evidence, some data that potentially long-term it might have negative effect. But when much more studies were done, there was clear evidence that it's beneficial. So people who have familial hyperlipidemia or genetic hyperlipidemia, first of all, make sure that you truly are not getting fat in some way in your diet, because a lot of times we miss out. And I was one of those people.
Right. And it's a very personal decision. We shouldn't jump to statins right away if your cholesterol is not coming down. It's familial. And in that situation, I think you need to work with your physician to find out specifically the health of your arteries. So they do things like carotid artery ultrasounds. You can do a CT scan or an angiogram of your brain to look at the calcifications in your arteries, especially the junction of the internal carotid arteries with the middle cerebral arteries. I see these things every single day in the hospital. Or, for example, the posterior circulation arteries, your heart calcium scores, and just your general health. All of these things have to be looked at, and you have to keep an eye on how you're doing. And then if there are things that are completely out of control because your genetics are really a very important player, that's when you start the conversation about adding medications on top of your healthy lifestyle.
But with your own doctor who knows you very well in the lead.
Absolutely. I hope that was helpful. Any special nutrition concerns as we age? So for an aging population, what are some of the things that are very important?
Everything. What I mean by that is it's a different process as we're aging. So there's the proliferative phase of life where there's growth, and then there's the degenerative phase of life. And things are challenged. For some people who are unhealthy, they're more challenged. The immune system is more challenged. The bone and endocrine system is more challenged. The cellular system, as far as neuronal cellular system, is more challenged. So when we age, it is a real thing, and we have to be aware. Yeah, not everybody ages the same way, much because of their genetic, and much more because of what they've done prior to that. But we do have things to concern.
I think this was Lynn's question, and Lynn wanted to know, she's on a whole food plant-based diet. She's doing amazing. She wants to know that, there have been some reports of protein intake in people who age. And yes, I think that's very important to make sure that you're aware of your protein consumption. And she also says that there are some, there's something going on about too low fat, that it could be, it could be related to worse outcome. Is that true?
So besides protein that you have to be aware, we now actually, that's fairly new data, or it's been corroborated stronger and recently, that as we get older, we do have muscle loss. We knew that, but that could be problematic, and we need to be aware of it and take more protein, not necessarily meat, but plant-based protein or otherwise, and you'll be fine. But other things that happen as we age, as your GI system has changed, your absorption changes, how you process B12 with its bound intrinsic factor, that changes. So we see lower B12 level as people get older, at a time where they need more B12 and more B vitamins. Their vitamin D levels actually get lower at a time where they need more of it because of vitamin D. It's an effect on nervous system. Your skin is not able to convert as much vitamin D, and your liver is not able to do the same thing. So be aware of all of that, as well as the omega-3. We talked about omega-3 and the aging brain. So yes, when you get older, you have to be more aware, more cognizant, eat better, eat healthier, but also find out if you have any deficiencies. I know plenty of plant-based people that are vitamin D deficient and vitamin B12 deficient. But even non-plant-based people that are vitamin D and B12 deficient. And up to this point, we were magical, saying, "Oh, if, it's natural, it's okay." And well, we naturally died younger, and we don't want to do that. That's why we're in this forum. So be aware of it. Aging does change your absorptions, bioavailabilities, and quantities of these vitamins, nutrients, and proteins, and macro and micronutrients in your body. So you just have to be a little more aware.
Thank you, Dean, for that. All right. Please comment on how to mitigate the effects of long-term use of antidepressants. So,
this is a controversial topic, especially the way I approach it. Well, I guess and at this point, a lot of our drugs are blunt tools. I'm not against them. We use them. They're useful. Some of my patients that have severe depression, oh my gosh, without it, life is horrible.
Absolutely.
What I mean by blunt is that there is no depression center where this molecule goes and just affects that depression center. It affects all of the serotonin in your brain and all of the dopamine in your brain. If it's the SSRIs, which is or SNRIs, which is the Prozac and Zolofts and all of those, they affect all of the serotonin. And that means that not just your depression, but a lot of your brain activities. That's why a lot of dopamine drugs also make people more addictive to things, and they go into these gambling processes. And so the drugs we have are blunt. They're not perfect. They're effective, and their effectiveness is not as great as we were initially purporting, but they're useful still. So I don't want to bash them all together. Those that are on it, they should continue using it with the guidance of their doctor. And then coming off of antidepressants, from my perspective, it's not so much the antidepressant itself, it's that the chemical infrastructure that's been changed to adapt around this antidepressant takes a long time to revert back to normal. It's almost like correcting a ship, the path of a ship, not a quick boat. This ship is going to take months and months. Remember that even the SSRIs take up to 3 weeks to a month before you see the first effect of it, if there is effect. And coming off of it, all the infrastructure of the brain that's been affected, now in order for it to settle back to its normal, if it does, it's going to take months and months. So it's a matter of time. It's a matter of what else you're doing, whether you're exercising. You remember, one of the most neurotransmitter stabilizing behaviors is exercise. Whether you're exercising, whether you're getting sun, whether you are socially active, all of those things are going to influence your relationship with the antidepressants and coming off of antidepressants.
Absolutely.
But thank you for this question. It's such a complex and important question. But nonetheless, again, because we want to make sure this is not a medical forum, do this with your physician.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Is there any scientific research regarding whether it is beneficial to speed up or slow down your metabolism? I suppose there are some doctors who say that when you speed up your metabolism, you age. And so what is the data on that?
the ultimate anti-aging is not living. I mean, in a way, like stopping everything. Not, yeah. I mean, to me, it's funny when people say eating this, eating that. The low calorie state is the healthiest one, and not because of anything else, because it actually creates less. Two reasons. Because it creates less negative byproducts, the oxidants and inflammatory byproducts of eating, especially bad eating. And also the lower calorie puts your body into a protective state at the genetic level even. So besides the fact that methylation is lowered, which is DNA methylation, which is damages and ages you, and all of these other processes I'm not going to get into. But as we live a normal life, if your metabolism is faster because you're exercising, because you're eating healthy, because you're more awake, alert, and all that, it's good as far as a normal living state is concerned. And if the metabolism is slow at other times because you've slowed it down, because you're resting and relaxing, you're in the parasympathetic state, and you're meditating, and you're some of you who do fasting, lowering the metabolism in your body and allowing the body to rest, that's fine. It depends what state you're in and how you've achieved that metabolic state. If the metabolic state is fast because of disease, because of a lot of times when you're diseased, such as when you have sepsis and infection, your metabolism goes sky high.
Absolutely.
Or if your thyroid is out of whack, your metabolism goes sky high. So in those kind of situations, high metabolism is bad. And in other states where you have hypothyroidism or other things, low metabolism is bad. It depends on underlying mechanisms. That's it. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, we're giving complex answers because they have to be.
Absolutely.
So it's not just a binary yes or no when it comes to metabolism.
Absolutely. Okay. I know Benadryl is not good for the senior brain, but I'm wondering if this also applies to meds like Zyrtec, Claritin, and Allegra. So real quick, yes, Benadryl is not good, but there's no evidence of Zyrtec, Claritin, and Allegra, which are completely different classes of antihistamines so far.
Correct.
Right? I haven't seen anything recently.
Correct. We still, to be honest, we're still waiting on data, greater data on all of this. Even Benadryl, taking it once a month or something like that, I don't think there's any data that's that harmful. But when you're using these drugs on a regular basis, it can't be helpful.
Okay.
One category that's definitely harmful, taking it regularly, is benzodiazepines.
Yeah, which is
the Xanaxes and the
Ativan
Valiums
and
and Ativan,
yeah.
all of those stuff.
Yeah, great. All right, gut-brain connection, probiotic foods, variety of foods, fermented foods, etc. That is a very, very broad area to talk about, and we will definitely talk about that.
We'll probably talk about that with our friend
Brenda,
and also with Will,
Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. Yes,
at one point.
But yes, there definitely is a gut-brain connection. Some people actually over exaggerate the amount of information we have.
Yes.
Like for example, we went to this place, and this lady is taking a whole class on vagus nerve and how it connects the brain to the stomach. I mean, we don't have that much information, so it's important to understand the nuance, the limitations of the research. But there's no doubt that there is a gut-brain connection. And yes, probiotic foods, prebiotic, foods, and then postbiotics.
Yes.
They're very important for brain health. Yeah, I haven't slept very well. That's why it just escaped me. And fermented foods are amazing. Of course, they have to be low in salt. Fermented foods sometimes actually tend to have high salt. So if you can consume them on a regular basis, that would be wonderful.
If you're going to focus on anything, focus on prebiotics.
Yes.
Which is food.
Yeah. So these are foods that have, soluble and insoluble fiber. Fiber is something that we're all deficient in anyway, and it helps create short-chain fatty acids in our gut, which actually keep the integrity of the blood-brain barrier, which is, the shield around your brain. So definitely is a good thing to do. All right. Next question is, I'm kind of rushing a little bit because we're running out of time, but I'll make sure that I answer most of them. Optimal times to eat certain foods. Now that is a tough one to answer because it just depends on what you're eating. But if we had to do a rule of thumb, eating high calorie foods should be reserved for earlier during the day, and reducing your calories at night is wonderful. So things like, high protein or high fat or too much spices should be eaten either in the morning or in the middle of the day. And as the day goes by, kind of make your foods as bland as possible. Complex carbohydrates are much better at night because they kind of help you wind down and go to sleep. Too much protein and too much fat at night is not good because your stomach gets activated and it starts secreting acids, and that could give you reflux, because most of the time at night we're either leaning down or sitting down, and that might not be a good time to eat too much protein and fat. Do you have anything else?
No, it's great.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
This was a long question, but one of our members has lost a lot of weight on a whole food plant-based diet, and she was asking how much weight loss is too much.
That also, here's another, it depends. We really don't like focusing on weight loss. We like focusing on eating patterns and eating proper foods. Because if you do that, your body will lose the weight when it needs to, retain it where it needs to, and will settle, especially if you add all this other stuff, which is good sleep and meditation and exercise and all of that stuff. It will settle where it needs to. But to actively manage weight loss is very complex. It can become problematic, and given the nature of goal setting and the anticlimactic nature of it, and then the yo-yo effect of it, I hate focusing on weight loss as a numerical quantity. Just eat healthy, exercise, meditate, sleep well, and the weight will shed itself to the point it needs to when it gets there. But to answer you, it's never been good to lose more than 2 pounds a week. So just be aware of that. And losing too much weight too quickly is bad, because with that, a lot of times you have electrolyte abnormalities where sodium falls so quickly that can cause significant brain damage. And potassium and so on and so forth. So if you're going to focus on the weight, don't lose faster than 2 pounds a week. But other than that, more on food and eating pattern and lifestyle pattern.
Yeah, this was a very specific question by Beverly, and she said that when she lost a lot of weight by giving up snacks and wine and things like that, she lost a lot of weight and her lips got very dry and cracked, and she has Raynaud's syndrome. So, making sure that you work with your physician, Beverly, and figuring out your vitamin deficiency, so on and so forth, regardless of what supplements you take, is important. Any weight loss, any sudden weight loss, regardless of any lifestyle changes you bring, should be done under the supervision of a physician, because weight loss can be a sign of other underlying diseases as well.
Correct. Or lead. Even normal weight loss, if you're not careful, not always.
Yes.
If it's not done well, if all the nutrients and everything else not taken into consideration, can become the nidus or the start of something bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, fantastic fungi for memory and nerve functioning. Have you heard of that? So this is mushrooms, right?
I mean, that's like a superhero name.
So I'm assuming that, I think this was Candace's question about certain mushrooms and fungi that are good for memory and nerve function. What are they? There's a lot of talk online about it, and is there any validity to it?
These are the same people that are selling biohacking, the same people that are putting butter in coffee, and these are the same people that are selling NeuroQ vitamins on TV. There's no magical one thing. There really is nothing. But a combination of things can be magical, and I've seen it when you eat healthy for a while. Incredible focus and all that. Fungi, or they're good stuff.
I have to say, mushrooms are amazing. Mushrooms are incredible, and we're learning more and more about their health benefits. But I think this whole mushroom in your tea and the kind of mushroom that improves brain function, I think it's the nutraceutical companies that are pushing that message. So just take it with a grain of, not salt, but spice.
But here's the thing, though. I mean, if you even look at it mechanistically, how could one thing in a fungi affect the complexity that is nervous system by getting through the GI pathway, getting through the blood-brain barrier, and then affecting the totality of the mind or memory or executive function to that extent? It doesn't make sense for somebody who my whole life is PhD and everything else is on neuroscience. So please, those at this point, there's no such thing. In the future, maybe we'll create something, but now there is no such thing.
Okay, Dean, rapid fire questions. Okay.
Rapid fire.
Yeah, I know you and I are not good at this at all.
I can't even say rapid fire in a rapid way.
Rapid fire. Okay.
Okay.
Is it okay to eat one thing and eat that the whole day? This is from our lovely member who is a caregiver of her dad who is sick.
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
One thing meaning just one grain. Or
no.
potato.
She basically saying like, is it okay to eat one meal and just kind of eat that the whole day? I think it's fine. I think it just depends on what that one meal is.
Yes.
If that one meal is, just make a burrito. If you can make a burrito and put some beans, some brown rice, some greens, some spices in there, roll it up, make 2 of them, put it in the refrigerator, eat half of it, eat the other half later. I think you're good.
I was thinking about like eating just potatoes for a month or for a day even. You're missing a whole lot. But Aisha's approach is much wiser. One food that's got a lot of things in there. Absolutely.
Exactly. Much love to you. We know you're a caregiver. You're taking care of your dad.
It is tough.
More power to you. We love you so much.
Take care of yourselves. Those of you who are caregivers, and there are a lot of them out there.
Absolutely.
You are actually under more stress than anybody else. The data shows it.
Absolutely. I add raw almonds to my oatmeal for breakfast. Should the almonds be pre-soaked? And if yes, for how long? Pre-soaked almonds gets rid of the phytanic acid and it makes it more absorbable. So yes. How long? I soak walnuts for days in the refrigerator, so it could be as long as you want, and it gets soft enough within 30 minutes, so that should be okay. All right, garlic and cardiovascular health. Is there any evidence?
The data is weak.
Yeah, so there really isn't much.
My mother or my grandmother, both of them would have disagreed with me, but the data is weak.
All right, microwave and health. So microwaving your food and health.
There's no valid data that there's something wrong with it at this point. I know that it seems so technical and it could be waves and this and that, but there's no valid data that there's anything wrong with it.
Absolutely. ADHD, ADD, and food. What is what foods are good for ADHD and ADD? Which ones are not?
Absolutely. I've talked about this with kids in school. We send these young men who are, hyper to begin with, and to sit in a group of 30 people.
Girls.
Yeah, and girls are much better than men. And we give them a sugary breakfast with lots of fat, and then we tell them to stay calm. That's beyond ridiculous. So anything that gets you hyped up, revved up, caffeine, obviously. I hope you're not giving kids up, but this in general we're talking about.
Yeah.
And fatty foods and high sugar foods will definitely exacerbate ADD and ADHD.
Yeah.
And actually get you in a cycle that becomes worse and worse. So try to avoid high energy foods as much as possible.
All right. And I'll make this the last one. What is white matter disease? One of our lovely members got her MRI done, and the MRI report said that she had white matter disease.
And that's ubiquitous as after the age of, whatever the age, as we get older. And it's never reported as a pathology because we don't do anything with it. But it's important. It's a predictor. It presages, and it's a great time to actually use that as a way of reversing the disease process.
Yeah.
White matter are the connections between neurons. There are these pathways in the brain that go between systems, from the limbic system to the thalamic system, from the medial temporal lobe to the frontal lobe. These connections, or between the brain, there's this huge pathway of nerves that go through, and these pathways are the axons that connect. And these axons have this fatty covering, which is the myelin sheath, and that therefore they call it white matter. And when you do MRI, it looks as white, and it has nothing to do with the color itself. It's how it's processed. Those connections that are affected either because of vascular disease, because of cholesterol, because of inflammation, which is the first thing that is affected in those situations, or because of head trauma or history of head trauma, create places where there's white matter disease or looks like white matter disease. And a lot of it is definitely predictive, but a little bit of it is something that can be reversed and affected. And even if there's a lot and you still don't have dementia or significant cognitive decline, by lowering inflammation, lowering oxidation, lowering glucose and fat, and if you have diabetes or pre-diabetes and or high lipids, what affects all those? Food. So the one thing I've seen is when every one of my patients who have some degree of white matter disease, when they start the lifestyle, we actually in the follow-up see
Less.
improvement
Yeah.
of that white matter disease.
Significantly.
Yeah.
And I have to say that, people who have had migraines or headaches,
Yes.
they also are prone to having white matter disease. So our member who actually posted this had headaches, and the doctor wanted to rule out something. So headaches do cause white matter disease.
And another white
associated, not caused. They've been associated with each other.
Yeah, sorry about that. And another white matter disease that I don't want you to kind of jump to that because that's a rarity and it's a different look of it is MS, multiple sclerosis. But that white matter disease manifests in a very, very distinct manner, and it's unmistakable.
The way that you described it is not.
Yeah, no, every radiologist would know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. The other kind of white matter is much more common, which is what you described.
All right. Well, we want to be respectful of your time. We love you guys. Personal updates, because a couple people actually asked about Obi. Obi's doing okay. He's going through his chemotherapy. Obi's our dog. He has lymphoma, for those of you who don't know. And he's doing well. We're just hugging and kissing him a lot, and he's just spending a lot of time with the family, which is wonderful. And then some of you guys said something about Afghanistan. Thank you so much. If you are following us on social media, a couple of days ago, we posted something about Afghanistan and the plight of women and this genocide of hope that they're going through. So appreciate it. Thank you for asking. We're in the process of figuring out how we can help out. And if you guys are interested, we'll let you know. That's basically it.
That is basically
okay.
it.
Thank you so much. Don't forget Brenda Davis's podcast on Monday. We will make sure that the link is up and you guys can all join us. It's at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Next Friday, we're going to have a phenomenal cooking session. I am so excited that you guys chose the fresh rolls, the fresh rolls with a peanut sauce and an alternative sauce for people who don't want to consume peanut butter. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's a good technique session, as well as beautiful. Could even be a lunch or a dinner. I think.
I think it's one of the healthiest, and tastiest things.
Appetizer.
And with Brenda Davis, she's one of my favorite human beings.
She really is.
By the way, she's the coolest. She's like the Fonzie of nutritionists. Her childhood stories, where she was. She would take on the bullies. Oh, I'll get her to tell some of the stories. She's just remarkable.
Seriously, we went on a trip together. We were invited to Saudi Arabia to give talks. Brenda Davis, Scott Stoll, and some other friends were there. Yeah. And being with Brenda was being like in a summer camp, an adult summer camp.
Oh, absolutely. Her stories are just amazing.
Her stories are incredible. We laughed so much, and she's just this lovely human being. I think you all are going to love her. So we're super excited about that. That's basically it. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. 7 more minutes than what we promised. For some of the other questions that we haven't answered, like aluminum and brain health, or cognitive testing in brain health, we will make sure that we post about them and answer your questions specifically.
2 things. So Brain Health Revolution is this. We have the courses. And also we're actually starting very, very, very proud in 2 months, an online Brain Health Institute. Actually, it's called brainhealthinstitute.com, which is going to be amazing. So for those of you that require neurologists,
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at Curtis, the comment. She's like, Fonzie Dean is too funny.
I aged myself. I know I aged myself because Fonzie is,
Love you guys. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you soon. Bye.
Have a great day.